Great, well, thanks everyone for being here. Can we give a hand to Grant for organizing everything? And thank you all for taking this time out of your Sunday to come be at a developer meetup talk. I want to really make this a valuable and useful talk for you. A lot of the projects in the Ethereum and the blockchain space in general might have a white paper, they might have an idea.
Sorry, are you recording? What's up?
That's a good point. Yeah, there you go. Cool. Technical difficulties.
Permits.
So they might have a idea or a white paper or maybe even a test net that's sort of advanced for this space right now, but they're probably not live in production. Our project is, and it's gaining significant traction, and so I think I'll be able to share a lot of the valuable lessons I've been able to have from taking that from concept into reality and implementing it. And you know, we're really gaining a lot of momentum right now. So just in the last few days, we've been covered by the mainstream media, you know, Investopedia, Huffington Post, and the main crypto media, including Cointelegraph and the Merkle and other things. And so in the build up to our ICO, and as BitBounce continues to gain stream, we've really been getting more and more attention. So it's an exciting time to share these things with you. What I'm going to be doing is giving a bit of background, context, a story, and then an overview of what we're trying to accomplish with BitBounce. And then I'm going to be going into system overview and the actual nuts and bolts of how the system we built works. Our BitBounce is patent pending, but hopefully it will inspire you to apply some of the methods and approaches I've been taking to different domains with your own projects. And I'd love to see that, and happy to talk after people have specific projects. So anyway, thanks for being here, and looking forward to giving a great talk for you all. So starting with the team, we've got a pretty small team. I am the lead engineer and the founder and CEO. My background is a computer science graduate from Stanford. I studied the systems track and majored there. I was a lead engineer on Turing Cloud. I'll show you guys that in a second. I had a number of collaborators there, but I've been the sole architect and engineer for the BitBounce system, and so I've really led that part. Alexis, who is also my wife, is here, and she studied graphic design at the Academy of Art in San Francisco. She was the lead designer for Turing Cloud, and she's the sole designer of BitBounce, and she's the reason why our stuff looks pretty good. Tim Draper has really been a mentor and backer since day one. He made his first investment in my company right about when we incorporated, and he's made 2 additional equity investments, and then lately a token investment where he bought 10% of the total supply of our tokens before our ICO, but I'll talk more about that. But that's been getting a lot of news lately. But that's our core team. So I want to talk about the journey so far. So we started the company in July 2014. And our first product was Turing Email, which was a more advanced and modern email client. And then we grew from that into building the whole Turing Cloud suite, which is, you can think of it as a competitor to Zoho Cloud, if you know that, so enterprise SaaS application suite for small and medium-sized businesses. And now we have 18 applications, and just to show you there quickly, this is Turing Cloud here, and we've got, for instance, a full email client that you could use as an alternative to Gmail and Outlook with a lot of tracking and other functionality. We've got email marketing product that's a competitor to MailChimp or Constant Contact. And we've got a whole suite of functionality, including a CRM style product, sales, different email analytics, a pipeline, different collaboration and productivity tools, including chat, calendar, contacts, task notes, video, office products, etc. And so the one point I'd really like to make here is just that our main value proposition in the core area of IT we really developed was in email. That was really our expertise. But then how do we get to BitBounce? So along the way, Tim Draper emailed me with the idea that has now become BitBounce. And he basically said, hey, it'd be even more exciting if you did this. He was willing to Bitcoin. He bought a huge amount in that auction. And so he wanted us to solve spam using email. And so at the start of this year, I decided to build it. And I built the MVP, I put it out there, and let's see what happens. And the traction started growing really quickly. And I started getting far more results for the energy and time and investment in BitBounce than in Turing Cloud. And so now we've actually got over 12,500 active users of BitBounce right now. We're adding around 400 per day, and around 50,000 registered users, processing around 60,000 to 70,000 emails a day, and just really significant traction. It's been exciting, and so I really made BitBounce our focus. We're still serving the Turing Cloud customers and growing that as part of the same company, but this one, I see Turing Cloud is going to be much more linear growth. This is growing exponentially, and so we're quite excited about it. So what is the motivation behind BitBounce? What are we trying to do? We're really trying to solve two problems. The first is spam. And so Ron mentioned the Viagra emails. Well, those are kind of already solved by Bayesian spam filters, but there's a ton of other emails that you get that are still unsolicited. So as a standard CS grad, I get a ton of recruiters trying to email me saying that they want me to work for their company. I don't want those emails. As listed as a company founder or executive, I get all kinds of people trying to solicit me their products and services all the time. So those are examples of emails that aren't picked up by spam filters but are still unsolicited in nature and consume my time and attention without me wanting it or me being compensated for. The second problem is difficulty contacting you can think of it as either high value, if you want to think about it that way, or people in high places. And that's people that it would be valuable to contact. So as an entrepreneur, investors, for instance, as a salesperson, you might want to contact a CXO, or as a recruiter, an engineer, or a recruiting target. Those people, right now, it can be difficult to contact them if you don't have a direct connection or you don't have someone to initiate contact, and this is a problem for a lot of people that don't already have, aren't very networked. And so just elaborating on that, you want to think as an entrepreneur, what's the starting state of the world, and what am I trying to change it? And right now, there's estimates that spam is still costing $20 billion per year in global cost. That's just email spam. There are other kinds as well, but email spam costs that. It's estimated to cost $712 per employee to U.S. businesses. Still, Google and Microsoft experts estimated in 2014 that 70% of emails were still spam emails. It's still a huge problem. So even despite regulations like CAN spam and Bayesian spam filters, still a big problem, hasn't really been solved. I'm sure some of you guys feel overwhelmed by what you receive as well. So what's our goal state? Well, firstly, we're trying to solve spam globally. And what our product does is make it so that your inbox only contains emails from people that you know or people that have paid you in order to receive their emails. So it's actually, I'll go into that in more detail, but that's the first thing, is solve that problem. Then secondly, we're really trying to make a market for email using our token, where our token represents and denotes the value that's being exchanged. And so what this will allow is for people to be compensated for those emails that are taking up their attention, and also for you to contact other people in a much more reliable way. So if you, this should apply to just people, everyday people, if you're wanting to market to them, but also people like an Elon Musk style entrepreneur or a celebrity. If you really wanted to contact them, then you would have a price where you could do so. So that's what we're looking to do, is establish a market using token exchanges rather than social capital exchanges. BitBounce and Credo are two solutions. I'm about to go into an overview of the architecture of BitBounce, but the main point to mention here is BitBounce is essentially the software component of it, and Credo is the token. And Credo is an ERC20 token built on Ethereum, and BitBounce is where everything happens in terms of the software. So let me go into the system overview. Well, firstly, BitBounce is a very complicated system. We've got kind of an abstracted model here where there's around 20 components. But really, if you think about each of those contains hundreds of components. So this is something where there's thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of components here, and then we're processing hundreds of thousands of data points every day right now, and storing a lot of information. So this is a very complex system with a lot whirring around all the time. But as engineers, we're trying to impose order on this, and that's what I'm going to do with this diagram. So let me start explaining it. I'll come back to this diagram, but I'll start with the web layer. So firstly, we've got an auto-scale group with two servers in it, which essentially only handle web requests. And what they handle is, they provide is both a single page application and an API. So the single page application, I'll flip here, everything here is built with BitBounce, and same with Turn Cloud is built as a single page application, which means if you're flipping around between products, it's much faster and more seamless, and it just kind of goes instantly, so you'll notice there's no kind of browser refresh when I do that. Or if I flip here, and so the web requests firstly handle a single page application, so rather than switching the URL and doing a full hard page refresh every single time, you're switching to a different view within that single page. Then those web request servers also provide an API, and so this is basically a REST which handles all the requests from the single page application and various other ones that are coming in there. And so part of the reason to isolate the web requests in their own servers is because you want all the processing work to be handled on other servers so that your web requests aren't slowed down. So let's talk about the data layer. So there's actually a bunch of different data stores that we have, and I'm going to talk about why we use each one, and then I'm going to do a use case through each of these. So firstly, there's our database, which is RDS, Amazon hosted. We're on Postgres, and so that will be used for storing metadata about emails that is necessary to handle to move them back once you receive a payment. We handle Redis for jobs, or background jobs and workers for the email processing, because if you do it through the database, then it can often plug that up and slow it down, and Redis is much more efficient and can allow you to get a much higher throughput of jobs. Then there's the blockchain, which we interact with for Credo transactions, and that's to watch incoming payments and to move around Credo. And then there's the email servers, and so that's either Google or different IMAP or Exchange or a different protocol-based servers, where if you have your Yahoo Mail, all the emails on that. And then finally, there's Coinbase wallets, and so we handle both Bitcoin and Credo through BitBounce. With Credo, that's interacting directly with Ethereum blockchain. With Bitcoin, we do that in collaboration with Coinbase. And so I can go into that, but I'm going to talk more towards the end about architecture and why I use certain data sources and the limitations of the current decentralized stack and why I feel it's necessary to do that. But we'll get to that. So then there's the processing layer. So I mentioned basically you don't want to do this heavy lifting in the web request servers because it just slows them right down. And so instead what we've got is a bunch of auto-scale groups, which by the way, if you're not familiar, it's basically a group of servers that will automatically scale up or down under certain conditions, and if one of the servers fails, you can automatically repopulate another one. So we've got 4 of those right now. The first one, BitBounce, has got the correct number of processes, for instance, and a few other checks. And if it fails, then it's going to automatically terminate that server and repopulate another one. And so let's think about this and then actually another thing I'd like to mention in the processing layer is what we want here is to handle a lot of stuff simultaneously in parallel, because you can't just handle one email at a time or syncing one of these. There's a whole bunch of stuff to handle at a time. We want to do it at as high throughput as possible. So what we have here is essentially layers of parallelization, if I'm enunciating that correctly. And so at the top layer, we have a number of autoscale groups that are essentially groups of servers. Then within that, we've got a number of servers, so 1 or more servers in the autoscale group. Then each of those servers contains a number of processes that basically then run job threads. And so each of those processes will run between 1 and around 30 worker threads, which will handle individual jobs. And the reason why I architected using that is you basically run into various limitations and bottlenecks at each level. And so when you, at the thread level, if you go over 40 to 50 threads in one process, it starts getting unstable. And less predictable stuff starts happening. And then if you go over a certain number of processes in the server, you start maxing out the CPU, using all the free memory, and some problems start happening there. And then with the autoscale groups, you can, there's a combination of vertical and horizontal scaling we're doing there. I'm going to talk about that more in the scaling section. But the idea there is we're trying to process it, have multiple layers of parallel processing in order to get as much done as possible and highest throughput as possible. So let me give an example for this. So let's say you come and you sign up for an account. So say that if I go to here and I sign up for BitBounce, this is our landing page, and I sign in for an email or up for an account, what we'll do here is we'll detect what account service you're using. So let's say I do testing.sf@gmail.com. If we can detect the right account type, such as gmail.com or known authentication or account types, then we'll take you directly to the authentication page there. So you can auth directly, which cuts out some friction. If we can't, then we basically take you to a selection page where you'll select your email account type. Then you'll authenticate here, which maybe I can do with a test account in a minute, but you basically authorize us access. Then what's going to happen, so this happens at the web server layer, then the BitBounce whitelist autoscale group will start syncing your contacts to the whitelist in the database. And so that basically has a copy of your contacts and a whitelist that you can then quickly update. Then with the BitBounce email processing group, that's going to start immediately filtering your emails. And so what these servers will do is they'll then check against the email server. So they'll say, hey, fetch the latest emails on your Yahoo Mail account, and are these sent from the whitelist? Or is the sender from someone on the whitelist? If not, then what it will do is it'll move that email to a separate folder, and it'll send an auto response. I'm going to go into the use case more, but basically what's going to happen here is you're going to have the top layer is going to handle the initial web request. Then you're going to have the database starts getting updated with the whitelist by the whitelist group, and your emails start getting processed by the email processing group, and then periodically from there, the cron server is going to schedule more jobs in order for that to continue happening. And so I think right now it's 15 minutes. Every 15 minutes we'll reprocess your emails and fetch new ones, and then we sync contacts every 6 hours, and there's a bunch of other things we do as well there. And then, and so what's happening is these background servers are updating the state of the database. The cron server is scheduling jobs on the Redis server, which then get run on these other servers. And these background servers are continually updating the state of the email servers where your emails are, and also the Coinbase wallets if applicable, and the blockchain if applicable. And then the health layer maintains resilience and failure tolerance in the system, so if something goes wrong, or if the state that isn't deemed to be healthy based on the custom check, then it'll replace the server with the new one. And so that's basically an overview of the system. Can dive into more details, but the idea is just to kind of summarize there, handle all the web stuff at one layer with a single page application and an API. Various data sources depending on whether we're talking about handling metadata, jobs, Bitcoin transactions or Credo transactions, or changing the state of your emails in order to solve spam for you. And then a whole bunch of processing servers, which I'll talk another thought about the architecture in a few minutes, but they basically handle all the heavy lifting of actually updating the state of the email servers and your wallet, and then health checks to keep everything going. So let's go into the spam filter use case. So the idea here is, let me pull up, so this is BitBounce, the dashboard, and you here will see some statistics. Let me make that a little larger. Some statistics, such as the time that we've saved, the amount in your Bitcoin wallet, the amount of emails that have been paid to deliver to you, and the number we've processed per day in the last 30 days, and you see a chart here. So this is just some statistics that give people an understanding of how well BitBounce is working for them and solving their problems. So then the whitelist. So what happened there is that at the start, we there's a responsive issue there where I'm not sure if that's to do with the HDMI, where it's showing on a smaller screen here, but imagine this is showing on the whole page. I'll fix that later. Where this will show you the whitelist, and so we sync your contacts, but then what happens over time is we want you to be able to both manually improve the accuracy of your whitelist, reduce false positives, and people will also request to be on the whitelist. So you can turn on and off contact sync here, and then also the whitelist notifications. When you come down here, you're going to see your pending requests. And so in the emails that people sent you, this is one of the older emails. This is our latest one. You basically see an option to pay, and I know you add me to your whitelist. And then you'll get a request by someone to be on your whitelist, and you can approve that if you'd like. For me, I've received a bunch of requests that I don't recognize, and I don't want these people on my whitelist because I don't know them, so I've just left them pending for now. But then you can come here and you can look through your existing whitelist and search through them and edit it and approve it. And so these are people that can email you for free. Anyone else will receive an auto response. So I had a really good example here. This guy, domains are important because that's what we direct people to. Right now we've been doing BitBounce.io. Just yesterday I bought BitBounce.com. It's just forwarding right now, but I'm going to update the SSL certificate so you can use it directly soon. This guy emailed me with a photo with him with Donald Trump, and which I guess was an interesting sales pitch for his domain, and wanted to sell me bitcoins.guru, which I declined at the time, and I'm still not interested, unfortunately. And so here what we did was we automatically filtered this email to the unpaid folder out of my inbox, and he got an auto response that said that he either knew me personally, he could pay an email promo code, such as the kind that I'd give out at a talk like this, or we've never met and I'll pay the BitBounce fee. Now this email's been up, and we also mentioned our Coinbase partnership, which they've okayed us with there. We've updated this to a new design, which is intended to be a bit more friendly, and we also are only showing the promo code for people that want to activate that feature, because for most people, maybe they're not giving talks. So here, if you get this email, such as another unsolicited one about some beta service, called BetaBound, then you can either say, I know you, add me to your whitelist, or you'll say, I want to pay your BitBounce fee. And if that happens, let's take this, you basically get taken to this page. It says, which digital currency would you like to pay in, Bitcoin or Credo? If I click on Bitcoin, then it's going to, I'll just show that in another tab, and if I click on Credo, then it's going to generate an address here. So if I pay with Bitcoin, it takes me to the Coinbase checkout page, and what this will do is when you can either pay with your Coinbase wallet, or you can pay with sending the payment directly to Bitcoin. When Coinbase receives the payment, they send us a webhook notification. We then check that the data payload to see the email, the identifier for the email that was with, check that the amount that was paid is sufficient. And we take it can be a little less because there's volatility. And then we move the email through to your inbox, and we notify you that you've been paid to receive an email. And then with Credo, we basically give you an address. I want to provide some sort of checkout functionality in time with this, but I'll talk about the roadmap in a little bit. But the idea here is basically people will pay their Credo. We are polling the Ethereum blockchain and looking for new transactions. When we identify a new transaction that matches the address, then we check that it is for a sufficient amount of Credo, and if it is, then we take the same action in terms of notifying that you have received, you've been paid to receive the email, and moving your email to the inbox. So that's a spam filter use case. So the idea here is my inbox only contains emails from people that I know who are on my whitelist. That whitelist will improve over time by people requesting to be on it, syncing my contacts, and me manually adding people. Then secondly, the inbox will contain emails from people that have paid in order for their emails to go through. So they've compensated me for taking up my time and attention. So let's talk about the next use case here, because that's how we're solving spam. So the next use case is the incentivized response use case. So this solves a different problem, but it's still to do with the market for email. And so what happens here is you will attach an amount of cryptocurrency with an email in order for the email to, in order for someone to respond. And so here, I'll show you it in the product. If I come here, and what we have is you can either send this to an arbitrary recipient, in which case you can just set the address and the amount that you want to pay, or we have a VIP emailing section. We're going to have, we have Tim right now that we're testing out with, but the idea is that we'll have this whole roster and searchable database of people that have agreed to respond personally for a given fee. And so what you do here is you just compose your email as it is, and you don't change the fee here because he's already specified the fee that he'll respond at. And then what happens is, after you send the email, you then get taken to the checkout page, or it pays automatically if you have enough in your wallet. But otherwise, you're going to be taken to the checkout page, and the email is held until you've checked out. Once you've checked out, we send the email to the recipient. We send a second email to the same recipient on the same thread saying, hey Tim, you've got $25 worth of Bitcoin, or X in Bitcoin, that is held in escrow for you until you respond. Then what we do is we run periodic checks on the user's account to see if he's responded, and if we detect a response, then we release we send an email to the recipient saying that their Bitcoin has been released, and if they have an account, then they will, if the recipient has an account, then it'll just go into their account. If they don't, then they'll be sent a link to sign up and get the Bitcoin. And so the idea for that is that we want, if you're not an already highly networked individual, or even if you are, there's still people that are outside your network that you might want to contact. And if you don't have someone who can introduce you to them, then you can pay them, and they've agreed to respond to you personally for that payment. And so it can just make a much more efficient communication market for that kind of transaction. I think I mentioned in the white paper that there are certain pairings of sender-recipient that I think get the most value out of this, such as the ones I mentioned of investor-entrepreneur, recruiter, recruiting target, salesperson, CXO. And one thing to mention is that this could really be helpful for people such as immigrants who might come to Silicon Valley and not have that pre-existing network. For me, I've been really fortunate that, I have some family in the Bay Area, but I went to Stanford and I had a whole network from that, and so I can often ask for an introduction from someone there, but if I didn't, then it'd be really hard to get my idea in front of the right people, whether I'm trying to sell that or fundraise or recruit them. So that's how we solve email access. The third use case is our autopilot, and what we have here is an enterprise and a consumer version of this. And so I'm going to talk about the enterprise one, where what happened is that a company emailed me and said, hey, we're starting to get, we've been getting dozens of BitBounces every day from our editors. Our editors ask people to respond to their newsletters, and they were getting dozens of BitBounces, and they basically wanted me to stop sending them BitBounces. So I said, well, why don't you pay some tokens for the emails to go through? And I said that I'd give them some, subsidize, give them some tokens initially in order for their emails to go through. And so they agreed. And so now we're doing that. And I'm not sure if I can bring up the Etherscan thing. Let me try to do that. But so now we have all these transactions that are going through all the time, which they are sending one credo. I'm not sure which ones of these are, but so for instance, this is probably one of them. And so they have an account here which looks like they've sent 1,129 transactions so far. And what happens is there, with the incoming emails, we check against their domain. And if it matches their domain, for the consumer version, we check against their email address, which they must have authenticated with an account, so we know that they have control of that email account. But for them, we check against the domain, and then rather than BitBouncing it, we'll have them send a credo from their account to the user and say, hey, and then the user's notified. And so you can imagine a world where the goal here is to further reduce the friction involved in our process so that a marketer isn't having to fill out 50 checkout forms or 100 checkout forms. So I think it's about 100 transactions that are happening a day right now for that one marketer, and it could be a lot more in order for their emails to go through. And this still preserves the goal of solving the two problems because your inbox still contains emails that you've been compensated for or ones that you know. And so this is something where we're actually getting the most transaction volume for right now. And I think that it's going to be, I tentatively think it's going to be the largest driver of our transaction with marketers paying tokens in order for you to receive their emails and compensating you in that. And the cool thing about that for them is those tokens can still be tiny. That could be 100,000th of a cent. It could be probably users will want it to be more than that, and you can specify the amount you want it to be, but you might still, it might still be a tiny, tiny micropayment, which again wasn't possible before cryptocurrency. So that's something really, really cool. The other thing I want to mention just whilst we at the end of these use cases is, so some people ask, what's the reason to use cryptocurrency? Well, here it is, faster transaction confirmation times. If you send someone an email, you don't want to wait days in order for your email to go through, which is how long typical dollar transactions take to settle. Here we can confirm the transaction either seconds or minutes, and the emails can go through in that time. And then same for the incentivized response. You just by the time a dollar transaction is settled, it's going to be days. I'll talk about more about why Credo beyond just Bitcoin in a little later. So. Challenges. I want to talk about this because bringing your idea from concept to white paper or the first email that Tim sent me about this was a paragraph, which is probably 4 or 5 sentences describing the idea, and there's all kinds of things you had to do to flesh this out. Well, some of the challenges include there's a lot of diversity in email servers, and so you basically have to do a lot of special casing even if they adhere to a specific protocol such as IMAP, there'll still be significant differences between different providers, from Yahoo to Outlook.com to AOL, and they update them sometimes without really much notice. And so you have to respond to that. And there are differences not just in terms of the protocols and the emails that you're using, but also in terms of the method you're using to authenticate with them, whether it's OAuth 2, OAuth, plain OAuth authentication, or XOAuth 2, or other methods. And so there ends up being, I've tackled this with a lot of inheritance, because you can think of, there's sort of a baseline of email service providers, email accounts, and then there are subcategories, but there's a lot of special casing, which has been one of the problems. And even then, another challenge is unreliability of those email servers. And so sometimes they just won't be up or accessible, or they'll throw errors randomly in kind of an unpredictable manner. And so you just basically need to tackle that through retrying things. And then, let's see, I had a couple notes on other challenges here. So, I mean, part of the challenge, and I'll mention this, is to do with scaling and, to do with scaling, I'll mention that in a second, and to do with the development of the decentralized stack. But basically, there's just a lot of special casing you have to do in order to make this operate reliably for users. And that's been one of the main things. And then, there's different bottlenecks. One of the fortunate things is building Turing Cloud really helped me solve and efficiently process a bunch of the email stuff anyway, so I kind of leveraged that knowledge in order to build this. So I want to talk about scaling. So this is partly to do with the infrastructure diagram that I had. So the thing I recommend here, and actually this is sort of a point I was going to make in architecture, was basically sometimes I think people prematurely move to microservices and they start out by saying, what are the microservices I'm going to have? Whereas I'd say you gain more information as you build and as your system gets usage about what are the bottlenecks and what are the things that are deserving of a separate microservice. And so I recommend starting out with a monolith and then gradually dividing and conquering it as you notice parts of it are slowing down, and you can kind of isolate those bottlenecks and systems into a separate service. So that's something that we've done, but the main scaling right now, apart from things I learned from Turn Cloud, are basically vertical and horizontal scaling. So that's gradually increasing the size of the server, so bumping up to a larger EC2 or RDS service instant type, and then horizontal scaling, so adding more servers to those, to the auto scale group, or adding additional groups. Then my plan in terms of scaling, so there's some amount of scaling that's going to happen on the blockchain with, so there's blockchain and then there's scaling of BitBounce. With blockchain, hopefully the things like blockchain sharding that the Ethereum core devs are working on will help with that and various things to make that more efficient. For our point of view, there's going to be an eventual limit, I believe, to the size that this infrastructure can handle, and a point where, let's assume for a second that it can handle 1 million active users. But then what we'll do is we'll shard on that. So we'll basically replicate this system and have a master database in front of that, which routes everything. And so you'd say, if the user ID is less than 1 million, route it to this this version of this architecture, and if it's above 1 million or between 1 million and 2, then route it to this one, and then that can basically scale infinitely. And one of the good things about this is that this architecture, there's not necessarily a need for data to be transferred between users in the same way that, because the email data is transferred via SMTP and the email servers, and the financial transactions happen through blockchain wallets. So we can basically have the data on different databases, for instance, for different user account or shards or user accounts, in order to be pretty much independent. So that's sort of the scaling plan. I'm feeling pretty good about it right now. It's basically more and larger servers, and then at a certain point it's going to be putting a master server in front of it that's going to direct one's replicated version of it. Architecture, I already mentioned the point about monoliths to microservices and doing that in a progressive way. But one thing I want to mention here is, I've been at some of the great talks at this meetup recently, and they were talking about the decentralized stack. Well, the decentralized stack is basically not really mature or fully ready yet to build a lot of applications. Or if you think about the space of possible applications that can be built on pure decentralized applications, it's still pretty small. I think that's going to grow over time. But if you want to tackle problems like the one we're doing here, it's really not viable, partly because things like storage aren't really done, aren't quite yet at a level of maturity where you could reliably store that stuff. It's too expensive anyway, and there's not really SQL interfaces and things to efficiently query built on it. So the stack isn't quite yet ready. So my thought is we need to build hybrid decentralized and centralized applications until the decentralized stack is sufficiently mature to do things fully on that. And so what happens here is we're doing the stuff on the blockchain that requires full transactions, and as things like Filecoin or storage get more mature, I'll look at integrating with those. But for now, if you're an engineer and pragmatic, then you can't really, you can't build. You're building on sand right now because they're still sort of laying the concrete there. And once those foundations are stronger, then we'll be able to do that. Other architecture thoughts that I had. One thing is that blockchain storage and computation is extremely expensive right now. So sending, one of these Credo transactions can be like 30 cents. And so we're looking at a number of things that will help us reduce and minimize the amount of transaction fees. So I'm really interested in Lightning networks and Raiden and things where we could do some transactions off-chain, or just basically having our own ledger that's off of a chain and then settling transactions when a user wants to withdraw or send. And so the problem there is that if it's 30 cents per Credo, and then marketers are sending 1 million emails a day, well, you don't want to pay $300,000 transaction fees a day in order for those emails to go through. So the place where you really need, I think, to update the state of the blockchain is when a user wants to withdraw it or take some action that's sort of moving out of the system that you have. And so I haven't decided yet whether Lightning Networks or something which uses cryptographic signatures for an off-chain mechanism, or having our own kind of ledger is the right way to do that. But that's definitely something I'm thinking about in order to minimize transaction fees. It's a very complex system, and things will fail and they'll reach bottlenecks as it grows. And so you're sort of having to continually assess and have metrics. I have a ton of internal analytics, and then figure out solutions that will cause the system to resolve that bottleneck. And you just have to keep kind of evolving that system. And then I mentioned the thing about the monolithic architecture. So roadmap. So there's a bunch of things that we're planning on doing from here. And I already feel like we've done a lot before, our crowd sale, and I think we're pretty far in terms of having a live and production system that's getting a lot of usage. But well, firstly, we want to scale the global adoption. And so there's now about 3.7 billion email users in the world. It's growing about 4% annually. It's basically a trailing indicator of internet usage growth. And so we want to scale our application to get as large solve the problem for as many people as possible. Then we want to recruit more VIPs to the system, and also right now, if you're wanting to use the incentivized response feature, you have to send that through our own BitBounce product, whereas we plan on building plugins for that part. The spam solution works at the server level, so we don't really need plugins for that, but the incentivized response one, so we'd have a Gmail and Outlook plugin, for instance, and I've actually built those for TurnCloud before, so that should be on our short-term roadmap. We're going to have build out our enterprise use cases as well, so make it easier for marketers to contact people. I'm also looking at some sales use cases, and just really, I'm really looking to pioneer this intersection of email, which is something I know really well, and this emerging space of cryptocurrency and blockchain. And then I'm also looking at building, this is something I'm excited about, it's sort of a recent idea, but an in-application exchange for Credo built on 0x. So we will essentially operate a relayer for the 0x protocol, so that, say that you receive Credo from someone and you're a totally new BitBounce user and you receive a bunch, then you could quickly exchange it for another form of value right in app, which I think is something that's going to be really cool. And then we're, so basically scale it up to a lot more usage, integrate further with existing email services, build out enterprise uses, do some innovative stuff such as in-app exchange, and then also simplify and just continually improving everything. So one of the things is when I'm talking to some people, they're like, I'm 1,000 times more interested in responding to an email that someone's paid me to respond to than just some random spam I've got. And so we want to make it easier to surface those emails and to see them quickly, and then just ideas that we have along the way. So in terms of our token, so the first thing, or I mentioned earlier why we use cryptocurrency. That's the faster transaction confirmation times. And some people ask me, why do we need our own token? And it's not necessarily that we need our own token, because you can do this using Bitcoin, which we did with the first version that I built. But it's a much more effective strategy for growing the BitBounce network that we have by creating our own token, because that allows us to do a couple things, such as we've created this user growth pool that we can then hand out tokens to early adopters. And so that really reduces the friction. Right now, you'd have to, with Bitcoin, you have to sign up, buy Bitcoin. We're trying to make that easier as well, such as with the Coinbase Buy widget, but you'd have to buy that, big barrier to entry. Whereas if I say, hey, look, you got 50 Credo right now, go send it to someone and we'll give you some more. That's a much easier way to get people started. And so we can use that to incentivize adoption and continued usage of BitBounce. Secondly, it also allows us to do things like a token sale. So that's one thing we're going to be doing right now, where we actually have a token sale for Credo on July 26th. We've been getting a ton of press for this, mostly based on Tim's investment. So this was, in the Huffington Post piece, it called this a historic investment because it seemed to be the first one from a major US investor that has been directly for tokens. And so there was no other equity involved in this transaction. It was, we sent them tokens and he had someone wire us money to our bank account. And so this was a pure token investment. Tim's, obviously a huge name in the crypto investment community and just, in investment in general. And so we've been getting media in Cointelegraph, et cetera. What we're looking to do is raise a maximum of $20 US, and it's going to be specified in Ether. And if you are interested in participating, you can go to BitBounce.io or BitBounce.com now, register for an account, and we'll send you out more information and instructions. We're going to be releasing the final terms and participation instructions on Monday. But this is something that I'm very excited about, and it's really going to give us the capital that we need to get to that global adoption. So other thing is that, another opportunity I want to mention is after that token sale, we're going to be looking to build out a small but elite team. And so one of the things I was chatting with Alexis about this earlier is a really cool thing about crypto is how capital efficient it is. And really the constraint here is sort of talent rather than resources. If you look at something like electric vehicle or autonomous cars, which are also changing the world in a big way, they're raising hundreds of millions of dollars, and then their teams are saying, oh, that's not enough, we need to raise even more, even like almost in the billions, extremely capital intensive. Whereas cryptocurrency, the whole thing was started by one pseudonymous individual, and then there's a lot of places where a very small team or has been able to contribute. We're looking to build a really small but kind of a world-class team of people that are passionate, want to work hard, that like doing really high-quality work, can bring kind of reason to solving big problems and be excited to work with us. So if you're interested and you think you're one of the best engineers you know, then send me your resume. So that's the talk. We've got a Q&A section now, and so hopefully I've inspired a few questions.
Yeah, so I think this is a more social aspect question. Like, if someone like a VIP sets it at 40, is it a bidding system, or is it I said 40 and it's almost guaranteed the person will respond?
So right now it's more like retail pricing where they list a price. If they're a listed VIP, I am considering looking at a bidding model, but we need to think about there's sort of like the liquidity for that individual, and so there's interesting things with bidding, but right now it's basically what is the price they'd be willing to respond at.
Yeah, because, because you can see someone like a Draper or a Musk, you'll get a ton of these. So
yeah, well, I was talking with Tim, and he's already had a number of these sent to him and met with some of the people that were sent to him. And he basically said, for a certain amount, if someone's sending me 10 cents, it's not worth it. It's not worth it for his time to respond. And so the question is, ideally everyone sort of has a price, and that price might be really, really high for certain people, but they have a price that they'd be willing to value their time at.
Yeah, you presented this very nicely architected centralized server system. So I'm wondering what role the blockchain plays, and why you're not just using some accounts in a SQL database to handle the payments and maybe integrating with Stripe or something. Is it mostly for the ICO, or are you going to try to foster a little bit more of an ecosystem where there are email providers as well?
Sure, so on the first point about decentralized applications, I mentioned in the architecture, I think it's necessary for solving certain problems to use a hybrid application with decentralized and centralized components right now. And we use the blockchain for settling and making the transactions, and that's important so that users know that they actually received the transaction, and we're not just having it in our database that could be altered or hacked. In terms of why cryptocurrency rather than Stripe, well, Stripe still takes days to settle the transactions, and that's why we're really using cryptocurrency. And you can do a webhook, but even those transactions can be rolled back, and they're not going to be verified, and users can refund. So let's say I send $1,000 to Tim Draper, he responds to my email, and then I go and ask for my bank to refund it. So it doesn't give security to our users. So I think you could hypothetically do it with something like Stripe, but I think cryptocurrency, this is a use case where cryptocurrency has some properties that make it a much better approach to solving the problem because of fast transaction confirmation times, and they're non-refundable.
You mentioned that you'll use some of your tokens to sort of give away for free and incentivize people to use the system. What percentage are you planning
30%.
Can you repeat the question?
He was asking the size of the user growth pool, which is the number of the tokens we're giving out to incentivize adoption, and the response was 30% of all tokens. Plus, by the way, there's no inflation in Credos, it's a fixed supply. Yep.
What type of interchange fees does BitBounce charge, and are Credos divisible?
Yes, they're divisible up to 18 decimal places, and so dollars are only divisible up to 2. Credos are so I imagine that at a certain point, fractions of Credo will be sent around. In terms of the transaction fees, BitBounce currently takes a 30% transaction fee, which is what Tim recommended. So the user still will receive 70% of the transaction. There are costs to operating the service. So I think it's important to at least cover our costs and also have an incentive to continue, growing and building the service. That transaction fee could change over time, though. 30% is a significant amount. So, but that's what we started with.
Do you have your own private Ethereum network, and what version of Linux are you running on your servers, and how much are you spending on AWS a month?
Sure. So, Trusty Tar Ubuntu 14.04 for our Linux distribution, which has been great. And in terms of the, we're not running a private Ethereum network right now. It's on the public blockchain. I'd like to keep it on the public blockchain unless certain things happen, such as the developers are not able to solve the scaling problems, which I think they will be able to solve. I believe they will. But in such a case, we could operate our own blockchain and essentially kind of fork things. AWS, I'm not going to disclose there, but it's actually one of the things when building this stuff is that people think the server costs are going to be a lot, but actually human capital is much more expensive, and so it's a fraction of what engineers' salaries are around here.
How do you interface with Ethereum?
Well, you can basically right now you can do it through a couple of ways. You can either set up and run your own node, or you can use a REST service like Etherscan has a REST API, and I found the latter to be quite convenient.
About the VIP stuff, how are you verifying that VIPs are the actual people sending the messages?
So that's a great question, and something that actually I addressed in our white paper, which let me call up for you guys. So BitBounce. Sorry about that. So we have a whole white paper here that I would encourage everyone to go and read, especially if you're considering buying Credos, and address a lot of these. So what I say right now is what we're doing for now is kind of a manual solution where we're vetting the VIPs, we're asking them to agree to terms of service where they will require, that require them to reply individually. Right now, that's not an ideal solution, but I totally agree. People aren't going to want to pay for a secretary to respond. You're not going to want to pay $1,000 and then Elon Musk's secretary responded to you. But what I say here is that what I'd like to do, and this is a solution I'd like to move towards, is having one of the emerging device identity solutions. And so there are, here's where I talk about it. And so basically, there are certain things like Civic and Uport where they're building identity blockchain. And so what you could do there is say, okay, I got a response from this iPhone, which I know from the blockchain is Tim, and Tim controls that iPhone, and so I know that automatically that it's him. So right now we're doing kind of a manual thing to ensure responder authenticity in terms of vetting them and getting them to agree. But I'd like to move to an automated blockchain solution once the identity device blockchain solutions get to a certain point where they're ready.
How's your legal structure in terms of token sales and
Yep, so we're a Delaware C corporation, and we're doing it through there. I haven't wanted to use one of the tax havens that a bunch of people are using because I think that I actually think that's going to be a riskier strategy in the long term. And I think this is kind of like Amazon initially purchases on internet sales weren't regulated, and they only regulate that within the last few years. Airbnb weren't regulated for a long time, now they're paying hotel tax, that kind of thing. And so in terms of the terms of service, I'm going to be releasing these on Monday, but we basically, I've had our law firm put together a whole lot of terms of service, or a whole official terms of service, which we're going to be finalizing on Monday. But basically, we're operating through a Delaware C corporation, where that company owns the tokens. I intend to have my company engage with regulators, ideally through an association of token creators, in order to try to formalize regulations for it at some point.
And are US residents allowed to participate? Or
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not a security.
No, well, I actually think, and I addressed this in our compliance section, but basically there's a bunch of things you can do to reduce the chance that it's a security. And such as having your token already be live in production, having real utility behind it, not offering equity-like attributes or rights associated with the token. So we're doing that. So this is a utility token that people would buy in order to use with the BitBounce service. They buy it early because the early adopters get a far better price than the mainstream adopters would in order to use the service. So I think I've talked with our lawyers, I've looked into this a bunch. I think we're about as compliant as we're going to get, but there's uncertainty in the regulatory environment, and I intend to engage with regulators.
Can you disclose your law firm's name?
Wilmer Hill. I've also talked with Perkins Coie as well.
You just mentioned that earlier adopters will get a much better rate than sort of the mainstream adopters. Can you explain how that, what mechanism?
Well, I mean, this is sort of the economic theory. We can't make any guarantees on the price of Credo, but the idea behind these utility tokens is that initially the adoption is nascent, so the organic demand for that token is very small, and then over time, as the service gets adopted by a larger and larger portion, the demand will grow. So if we go from 12,000 active users to many millions, there'll be much higher demand for people to pay in Credos, and so since the supply is fixed.
Is your price denominated in dollars, and then they pay with Credos, or denominated in Credos?
We're on the UI, we're looking at showing different versions, but it's dollars. People are more familiar with that, but then they can see it in other forms first.
How do you expect the email providers such as Gmail or Yahoo to respond to your initiative if that scales up and to basically see that emails get a payment system in the middle? Could that be a risk?
I think they're going to be happy about it because we're improving the experience for their users, and these companies are looking to spur innovation. Google's done a whole bunch of stuff in terms of releasing their API. The whole point of that was apparently to spur innovation. So we're innovating in this space. I think they're going to be happy about it because we're solving a problem for their users and improving the state of email. And maybe we'll look to have more formal partnerships with them at some point along the way. And hopefully they'll do things that will do it. But I haven't had any complaints from them, and we're already using theirs. Doing a lot of API calls or server requests. Yep.
Yeah. So historically, with most of these tokens and currencies, the speculation has far outstripped the actual uses, and it's made them very volatile, which is not the great UX when you have tokens and suddenly you were paying 10 tokens for an email, now you're paying 100, now you're paying 1. Are you worried about that, and how do you plan to deal with that?
Well, volatility is definitely a problem, and it's not really been, I don't think it's really been solved. Some things like asset-backed crypto could solve that, but I don't think it's really been solved. It will be a problem with our token. It'll be volatile. I think early adopters are still going to get a great deal for using our service. So if you buy a bunch of tokens, then down the line, you should still be able to contact and get a lot of people to respond to you for those tokens. And I think that we still support Bitcoin. Credo's made as the primary and default way in which people are going to track. We're still supporting that, which Bitcoin is still very volatile, but is less volatile than Credo will probably be right after the ICO. With the cryptocurrencies, I think they get a little less volatile over time, and I expect that it's like kind of like with public stocks or companies right now. penny stocks are extremely volatile. You know, small market cap, you have one big investment firm come in and then boom, price goes way up. So it's like that, but as the market cap gets bigger and more capital is in them, I think the volatility will even out a bit.
I was wondering how you position your product compared to someone who seems to be selling something.
Sure, that's a great question. So 21, we solve spam and email access. 21.co only solves email access. So firstly, they don't really compete on the spam problem with us, and that's actually our focus. Secondly, on the way that we have solved the problem, there's a few key distinctions. So with 21.co, you create an @21, so a Stewart at 21.co account, and then people would email you with that address. We work with existing email accounts. So you can use your existing personal or business Gmail or whatever address you have and use it with BitBounce. And I found in my work on Turing Cloud, people tend to want to continue using the emails that they have and would prefer to email back and forth using one of the ones that people recognize from them rather than some new email address that you've created for them. And so I think it's a better approach to the problem. They also don't have a token, and so I think the main differences are they don't solve spam, we solve spam, that's actually our focus. We do overlap with them on email access, we have a different solution. I think our approach is better because we work with existing email accounts. We also have our token, which I think has a bunch of advantages too.
So you took a 30% cut in the transaction. How do you deal with the gas costs? As I imagine you're going to be doing more and more smart contracts in the future. Are you passing that on to the end user, or are you eating that cost? How do you do it?
So the sender pays the gas fee right now. With the marketing use case, we are, that one I mentioned with the autopilot, we are subsidizing them with Ether and Credo. And so we're helping them pay some of the transaction fees. But again, I mentioned that we're looking to do off-chain for some of that to reduce the amount there. But basically, what I would like to do is have the sender pay the transaction fee, because it should be a pretty small percentage of the total amount they're sending. Remove those transaction fees from a bunch of the use cases because we can do things off-chain, and then just remove that. You know, it's not like a good user experience for people to have to figure out the gas that they're going to pay in order for their transaction to go through, I don't think. And so it should simplify, and they should just pay the transaction.
Talking about like off-chain stuff, do you imagine you'll go on-chain with like Cosmos or Polkadot?
I haven't really dived into those projects sufficiently to explore integration possibilities, but we're already on chain. You know, we're already on chain with Bitcoin and with Credo on Ethereum. And the Bitcoin stuff is fine, and actually Coinbase has some ways of doing off-chain stuff without transaction fees, which I'm using. But basically with Credos and the Ethereum blockchain, paying that volume of transaction fee is just not tenable for our solution. And so I'm looking at a number of different possibilities. Right now I'm leaning in the short term towards having our own ledger that we won't pay transaction fees on, and then we will settle the transactions on the Ethereum blockchain when a user wants to withdraw or exchange them for something else.
Sorry for that question, it's not quite correct, but why did you choose Ethereum when there's a big question marks about scalability?
Well, I think Ethereum's great. I think the scalability bottlenecks have only really come in the ICOs when they've been overhyped or oversubscribed. That's been the main issues. And I think the Ethereum core developers seem really smart, and I believe that and hardworking. I think they're going to solve the bottlenecks, such as through sharding. And so, I believe in the protocol in Ethereum. You can't really do it on blockchain right now Bitcoin, because they haven't implemented things like rootstock and stuff that would do the smart contract. And so you could do it Ethereum or one of these other private blockchains, but I think Ethereum is the best place to do it right now, based on the conditions that they provide. I think they're going to solve the problems.
How about like Ethereum Classic, Waves, and Bits? Like there are other solutions.
Yeah, I mean, there you just need to look at the usage. So the main reason to do that, I would say, is security. So the question is, what is the cost for a hacker to hack the blockchain? And it's much higher on Ethereum than with EDC because there are more nodes in the network, and so the cost to get a majority of computation power is far, far higher. And some of these other ones like Wave, they could be great as well, but Ethereum has been what I've been most familiar with. I think that it makes sense to do it on ETH rather than ETC because of the improved security, and I just think that they seem like world-class core devs and the kind of people that I'd want to build on their platform. Oh, back there, last one.
Okay.
One more.
Do you have any plans down the road for other applications, paying for services? You were saying $1,000 a timber draper. Let's say I want to just have a 15-minute Skype video with somebody, not just for email reply. What's the long-term?
Yeah, so great question. For the immediate future, I'm going to stay focused on email. That's something I really understand on a technical level, and I feel like a strong competitive advantage because of that understanding. And the problem is still huge there, 20 billion just per year for email spam. And email, although some of the growth in other uses, email is still the dominant form of business communication in the West. What I have been looking at is after we've really nailed the problem for email and gotten a significant adoption, taking our solution to other use cases. So for instance, I've been talking a lot with some Chinese individuals who were marketing our token sale to China as well. They use WeChat a lot. And apparently spam and access is also a communication access are significant problems over there. A number of the ones that I talked to, they said that their pending message requests would just say 99999. And so I think that's something where after we've really nailed email, I'd look for other communication mediums where they experience spam and communication access problems. I think communication access problems are pretty universal. Spam is really where there's no cost to send a message to someone. We look to do that, and to things like SMS and phone and video communication in time. That's the roadmap, is basically solve these problems initially on email and then across all communication media.
Just a quick follow-up. You mentioned that you're raising $20 million, and the articles say he bought 10%. Does that imply you put in $2 million? And if not, can you comment on that at all?
So I don't want to comment on the discount. We gave him, Tim has been an integral investor to our company. He's really a teammate, and he provides a lot of value. So we gave him a discount, and I think that's totally legitimate. If anyone else is planning your token sale, I think it's worth thinking about what strategic participants you might be willing to give a discount to. But it's really big to have him come in that strong for our currency. And I think it provides huge validation for people on the idea.
Testing. Oh, all right. Can we give another round of applause to Stewart? Yeah, I think that was an awesome talk, and yeah, hopefully the problem of spam gets solved forever with the magic of crypto.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for presenting. So, as we usually do, we have a little time after the talks for people to give presentations. And Daya, do you want to come up and talk about where you're working?
Sure. Actually, I just have a small announcement. I am not ready to talk about what I'm working on right now. I run the SF blockchain, Bitcoin, and cryptocurrency meetup. It's one of the largest. And if you're interested in hearing interesting talks like this, as well as topics on how to get into blockchain development, programming, ICOs, token sales, that's you're welcome to join. It's free, and it's pretty much going to be like this, and it's a good way to get to know people and meet people. You're getting in on the ground floor, and I think this is going to be a huge runway. I'm involved in the Bitcoin, in the blockchain space, and I think this is going to be a disruptive force for the next 20, 30 years. So it's a good time to start. Thank you.
Eduardo?
Thank you. Yes. First off, thanks to Grant for hosting us, as well as Alexis and Stewart for putting this together. It was pretty good. But yeah, similar to I co-organize another group around here. I co-organize the Silicon Valley Ethereum group. Next week we have a pitch night on Sunday. I'd love to see you guys down in Mountain View at Hacker Dojo. And additionally, I wanted to inform you guys of a similar project that I'm working on the side called cryptography, where we try to break down these really technical concepts in less than 2 minutes. And currently we're only on YouTube, but I'm looking for partners, people to help. And if you have something that you really feel like you can break down in a sort of simple and easy to understand way for non-technical people, I would love to talk to you guys after the meetup. Thank you.
Is Lucas here?
Hi, I'm Lucas Hindren. I'm the CTO of Simply Vital Health. We're building a platform that allows healthcare providers to frictionlessly share data and provide analytics. On top of that, as part of that vision, we're building up our own distributed system right now, and if anyone wants to talk with me about that afterwards, I'll be back there. We're also hiring right now.
Cool. Thanks, Lucas. Ryan?
Hey guys, so I'm Ron, CEO of Snip. So Snip is a blockchain-based media company. We're like building the next generation of news based on blockchain tech, and the idea is that we connect between writers, readers, and advertisers, and we're building a platform where you can read interesting news which is verified, non-fake, and tailored to you, using an ecosystem which is based on a blockchain token. And we're presenting it like next Thursday. You're welcome to come and like hear about it in more depth. And you're also welcome to like catch me over here like after the show, talk, and just like hear more about it. So thanks.
Cool. And finally, Alex. There you go. Sure.
Hi guys, I'm Alex Botery. So I'm organizing a conference called, it's an online conference on the 15th and 16th of November called With the Best. So it's a series of conferences. The last one was on AI, and we hosted Sam Altman and like more than 50 speakers, and we're going to do the same on blockchain. So it's going to be blockchain.withthebest.com. And I'm just starting to organize this conference. We're looking for speakers. It's entirely online, so it's going to be probably about 1,000 attendees, 50 speakers, and it's only going to take an hour of your time if you want to be speakers. So if you want to participate, just come say hi. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Alex. And sorry, I didn't catch your name. Lloyd. Lloyd. All right, here you go.
Hi guys, I'm the founder of Smarter, smartre.io, and we're a fractional real estate company, startup. We started last year, and we've, a lot of times people when they hear about real estate, it's like, oh, another great real estate idea. But we've actually worked on it. We paid tons into legal fees for the last 6 months to get to legal compliance. And also our tokens are actually backed by Lloyd's of London. So we've actually put a lot of thought into it, and we just went live in terms of our website. We have a private beta of over 1,500 people, and we have about 1,700 people who've committed to put about $3,000 into the platform. So we're, this is not our first rodeo. The co-founder and I, we've done this before, so check us out.
Cool. Thanks so much, and is there anyone else I missed that messaged me before? And I think that was everyone. Well, thank you guys for coming, and feel free to stick around and network with each other and talk, and